All right. Kevin, back with you for another episode of the $1 Million Relationships Podcast. And today I'm here with Anthony. And Anthony,
We're gonna
welcome.
say it's Amunategui. Welcome,
Amunategui,
welcome.
I was going to let you. I love it. I
There's a
love it.
total.
And you know, we've been talking for a little bit here before we hit the record button, and I am like so stoked to have this conversation with you right now. And so, what I want to do, first, before we get into that, though, I want to give a shout out to Jessica over at the Podcast Guest platform. That gal is such a rock star,
Rock star.
and she has kind of taken me under. She just likes what we're doing here at the $1 Million Relationships Podcast. And at least once a week, she reaches out to me and is like, Kev, I think this person would be a great guest for your podcast. And she did that recently with you, and here we are. And the cool thing about Jessica, it is awesome having people like that in our corner, because not once has she ever steered me wrong. So I always look forward to receiving her messages. I look forward to following up with whoever, and I always know it's going to be good. And so that's why I know this is going to be good. And so,
Well, I hope I can live up to Jessica. She does do some amazing stuff on this planet, and I'm grateful that she partnered the two of us together. It's been fun
yeah.
so far, and let's have some more fun with it.
Yeah, for sure. So let's start. Let's set a little bit of context here to start with. So I'm going to turn it over to you so that you can talk about what you do, who you serve, what inspires you most about the work you guys do, and the impact you're making in the world. And let's start there, Anthony. We'll set a little bit of context here.
Kevin, I have been a serial entrepreneur my whole life. I have,
Okay.
I from childhood on, I jumped through a couple of jobs early on, trying some different things, and I recommend that to all the kids that are in my life, right? Young men and women that are in my life. I always say, God, go for multiple. Just take a different job every few months. Go for it, man. Learn, and I think that was a big gift for me, as having different experiences young and feeling out kind of what I wanted, and that was a gift. And then, but I've always had a business of some kind, from the first lawn mowing business I had to a detailing business as a kid, detailing cars. And then, really growing from there. I had some large detailing companies. I had a large painting company where I painted homes in Florida. I lived in Florida as a kid growing up. And slowly right after that, when you asked me earlier about who was the most influential relationship, I meet a guy. His name is Kevin Flynn, and Kevin Flynn he doesn't no longer exist. He passed away, unfortunately, a little over 10 years back, and he was a great friend. He was a guy I met, and really was a gift of life, where I found sobriety early on. As a kid, I had some wayward ways where I kind of got carried away with drinking and drugs in South Florida, and I find sobriety, and in sobriety, I find a friend named Kevin Flynn, and Kevin is this really bright light on the planet. And just it was a great friend, right? I saw the world a different way because I had met a friend like him, and he brings me through, together we find sobriety, and we do all this work and help others. And he's that guy that you were talking about, a friend of yours that just recently passed away, that really is a dynamic friend. What's your friend's name that just passed?
John Ruland.
John
John
Ruland.
Ruland. Yeah.
And when you talked about him, I really got, like, there's people you meet in your life that help you become a better human being, right? There's
Oh, yeah.
those ones who, um, you meet them, and they're somebody special, somebody different, somebody that is a bright light, maybe even a gift that I would not have been able to see the world without that friend. And I bet you John Ruland was the same way for you.
You bet. You bet. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. That these people who come into our lives that offer us perspective that we didn't have before, and when that perspective is just in alignment with who we already are and stuff, man, magic can happen, and it can happen in such a powerful way, you know. And
Yeah,
that is definitely what John did for me. Was
yeah.
he was that guy for sure. So
Right. Even the legacies leave you in that wake. There's a vacuum gets created when Kevin passes. Same thing. The way you talk about John, it's the same thing. It's going to happen there, where leaves this vacuum in the world where they were just such a bright light. And Kevin was that for me. Through sobriety, finding the people in AA that were this. I mean, it taught me a different way of living, which is something I would not have experienced without them. And sobriety becomes this real gift in my life, where I could see the world differently. And same with Kevin. I get to into business with him as a young entrepreneur. I started a construction management company, and he comes in a little bit later on as a venture capitalist and helps me grow that company from this little redneck business I had in the basement of my home to an actual organization and that runs all 50 states and
Wow.
taught me accounting and business practices and how to see a much different table than the ones I'd sat at before, right? The language and the vocabulary and the way of being, and it really helps me see some stuff that just I didn't have access to, right? I mean, a lot of what you do in business, I find out is it has to do with the way you speak, the way you show up, the behaviors and actions that you are. And, without having someone that, creates that example for you, we're kind of left to making things up. And I don't know that that works all the time. We really need those people that show us, look, the thoughts, actions, and behaviors that I have are really what create the life I have.
Yeah.
And, every once in a while we get lucky to find a couple of those examples, and when you find them, cherish them, right? Like hold on to them and nourish those, because I don't know. For me, I was lucky to have a relationship like that. And after he passed away, uh, you know, there was a lot of work to be done. And I think that's one of the gifts is to continually to look at where can I work on Anthony, right? As much
Mhm.
as the businesses I have today, I have 9 different companies, and even though I work on those companies and they're wonderful, the magical people that run them, and I've learned to bring on some great teams, and they run the companies really well. Um, the more work that needs to happen is on me, right? It's more about
Yeah.
my actions, my behaviors, my thoughts, the things that how I act and live. And the more I work on Anthony, this vehicle, the better the vehicle could drive, the more I can show up, and that was all learned behavior from those early relationships,
Yeah. Yeah. You're right. It's how we show up that makes all the difference and stuff. And when we show, I mean, I know for myself, I when I just show up to be in service of other people. Well, for one thing, I found out it's really hard to have a bad day. It's really hard to feel bad about stuff going on when we're in service of others, when we're in genuine service of others, because being in service of others, especially when those others are so appreciative of us, I don't know a better feeling in the world. That is a pretty amazing. It's kind of hard to have a bad day being in service of others. And so and I just like being that way. And because the cool thing is, when we show up in genuine service of others, we get to give them this gift that they seldom get to receive, which is this they get to feel seen, heard, and understood. And when they feel that way around us, well, they're just like, man, I like that film. I want to spend some more time with you.
Yeah, yeah,
and
right.
it's so doggone powerful. And you have that gift. You make people feel that way. I mean, I've only just met you, but just and before we hit the record button and your right hand guy was, man, you just spoke so awesome about him, and I could see him like perking up when you did that. And you just make people feel seen, heard, and understood. And that's a gift, man. That's a gift. So
Somewhere in there, there's that figuring out that we're all, 8 billion of us on this planet. I fundamentally believe we come from one being, right? I don't know, I've traveled this world, and I've worked hard on studying religions, right? I love to read. I have studied most every religion I can get my hands on. And, when I really look at whatever their God's name is in their religion, their gift, their guidance, they're all looking for the same thing. Look, if we could be givers to each other, if we
Yeah.
could support one another, right? If it's in that loving relationship of our families, our communities, that gift, that part where we give more than we take, that's the, most every religion talks that way. Like
Yeah.
if I could give more than I take, there might be, a life worth living. And, guys like Kevin and John that we talked, those are guys who gave, right? Those are
Yeah.
guys who gave
Yeah.
more than they took. And help us, really see a different way of acting. And that's what happens when I got to AA, right? I get to AA, and one, finding sobriety was like a gift, right? Like just being consciously aware. Look, the first time I drank, it was, you know, right? Oh, there was that easy button, right? That first time you drank, it was like life can be uncomfortable, right? I mean, we go through this planet, it's uncomfortable, and early childhood and stuff going on in South Florida, and the first time I drink a drink, oh, you get this feeling and like just relief because life's crazy, and you get the sense of relief, and all of a sudden you keep trying to hit that button, and it's not working, right? It doesn't work anymore. You keep pounding on it, it's not working. And somewhere you realize, all right, this ain't working. All right, that's not easy anymore. Now that's hard, right? And then somewhere there, I find sobriety, and these guys in AA actually show me how to live sober, how to be okay with being uncomfortable, how to live a life that where I start to look at my actions and behaviors and thoughts and go, all right, how could I do better today? And that work leads itself to other opportunities I couldn't have imagined, right? Where we start to really look at, um, you know, how am I treating others and being, and I think that becomes a gift, right? In the ability to start looking at yourself, going, hmm, that's not working, right?
Yeah. 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 So before I ask, I've got another question I want to ask, but before I do that, I want to, because you've already talked about Kevin and what an impact that he has had, not only on your personal life, your sobriety, and I can only imagine, because I have a friend of mine, a close friend of mine, who has been sober since 2008, and such a big part. He runs a very successful company too, and yet what such a big part of his life is AA
Sure.
and helping other entrepreneurs. I mean, especially entrepreneurs, but anybody with sobriety, that is such a big part of his world and stuff. And so I can only imagine, you know, how impactful Kevin has been on your personal life, on your business life. But before I go to, is there anybody else? I just want to make sure, is Kevin where we want to kind of like keep our focus here for this conversation today, or is there anybody else that you feel led to honor because they had such a profound impact on your life or your business as well?
Well, I don't know. I don't know about you, but I've got a mom who I look at and go, that little Italian woman, rubbed two sticks together when there was no fire, and she made, this little woman who my father dies young, right? My father dies when I'm 7,
Oh
and
wow!
this is a woman who literally rubbed two sticks together. She worked at Denny's, she worked nights, and she worked 3 jobs, right? A woman who worked tirelessly to give my sister and I a life, and I can remember wake up in the morning and she'd be had fallen asleep at the sewing machine. She'd get $1 a zipper back in the, this is the early 70s, and just imagine I'd walk in our living room and there were piles of slacks out there, and she'd be sewing zippers in them, and she'd fall asleep at that darn stone machine, and then she'd get up and she'd take us to school, and she'd work all day and then work all night, and just it was a lot for a little woman. So I don't think I don't know that I'd be complete if I didn't go give her the biggest honor, right? This little woman who paid for my elementary school. I remember the last payment she made. I was 18 years old. She paid $25 at a time for payments for my elementary school. She sent me to a private elementary school, and I can think back at those little payments she made. I remember the last one she made. It was my 18th birthday, Yeah, or somewhere around that 18th birthday. So I was around 18, and she makes that last payment, and I just remember that look in her eye, like, yeah, kid. And look, I look back and the example of what she was for me and my sister, and what today, that's the example I need to be, right? Every once in a while I'll get tired in business, and I'll be like, I'm tired, and I can almost feel her on my shoulder going, "Get your ass back get back in there. Where do you think you're going? You got some work to get done here."
Yeah.
And some that drive that she gave me to learn how to work hard.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't realize you lost your dad. I lost my dad at a young age. I was 16 when my dad passed away and stuff.
Wow.
And
I'm sorry to hear that. How do you pass?
he got diagnosed with cancer at the beginning of my ninth grade year, and he passed away at the end of my 10th grade year. And I'll tell you what, as a boy of 15 and 16 years old, watching your dad completely deteriorate right in front of your eyes, man, that's tough. That is tough.
It's just a
And
killer. Yeah.
it's, but on the other side of the coin, I also I was gifted the time to have every conversation I could have ever possibly wanted to have with my dad. When he passed away, there was no remorse. There was no like, oh, I wish I could have told my dad this. I told him everything I ever wanted to tell him
Mm.
before he passed away. You know,
Mm.
and we had so many conversations, and and when he did finally pass away, it was more kind of like, he's finally out of this
Yeah.
thing,
Yeah.
you know, and so, but yeah, mom, boy, I'll tell you what, my mom was, when me and my brother growing up, my mom, boy, she was the disciplinarian. She was the crack the whip kind of gal. My friends didn't like coming over because, man, your mom is so strict, you know. And after dad passed away, all my friends are like, what happened to your mom? Your mom is so cool now. Her demeanor completely changed. Because and you know what's funny is my mom and dad got in Amway in 1975 when I was in fifth
Wow.
grade. They got in Amway, and years later, this friend of my mom and dad's from he gave me this cassette tape. I had to find a cassette player just to even be able to play the dang thing. But it was at a big Amway convention that was taking place right after my dad had passed away, within months after my dad passing. And he gave me this cassette tape of my mom speaking to thousands of people at an Amway convention, talking about her boys and talking about how proud she was of her two boys and how they had become the men of the house now that their dad was gone and stuff. And I'll tell you what, man, she was so proud. And she completely changed. And my friends, I mean, our house became the house to hang out at in the neighborhood. We had all the friends over, and it was pretty phenomenal. And wow, who would have? I mean, man, John, or I mean, Anthony, thank you so much for just sharing what you shared and just kind of allowing me to remember my mom and dad that way, because I haven't thought about it in a little while, and it was kind of cool to just kind of remember how good I had it growing up, and how what a relationship that I had with them, and that's really something. You and I are two blessed guys for sure.
Yeah.
And yeah, yeah. So well, so if you look at your life, and because you at this point have impacted a lot of people's lives, and so I want to look at a specific situation where you realized that you were making a really substantial impact, that you're like, oh man, that was so good and that was so powerful. You made a really big impact, and you also know, hands down, that would have never happened if not for the relationship that you either had with your mom or the relationship that you had with Kevin. What is an example of that?
Kevin, there are, when I look back at sobriety, and I have to go back to sobriety, right? Kevin
Okay.
and my mother are big influence, but without sobriety, right? A couple things happen that one, I don't become the father that I am today. Today, I've got 7 children, and the work that I do with my children, the life I can be, the father that I get to be because of sobriety, is not the father that I was when I wasn't sober, right? The father that wasn't sober was really more interested in drinking and drugs and all those things. And I find sobriety, and that becomes this gift of being able to see things a little bit differently, a lot differently. And I would say that was a big gift. One of the sons I have, I didn't even know I had. Right. I find out later on in life. I find him on ancestry.com.
Wow.
His name is
Wow.
Joe, and Joe's this amazing young man who lives with me today, and I get to watch him flourish. And he's a guy that I find at 26 years of age. He's 26 when I find him, and we end up. It was something I would not have done had I not done the work on recovery and all that work. And he gets to meet my mom and spend time with her before she passes. And he and I go around the world and we work on a TV show together, right? So we've been working on this TV show called Family Style, where I take my family around the world and we do these big adventures. We study a religion. We do these. We do a good deed. We do a grand adventure in every country we go to. The show's currently in post production. They're working on it now, and so Joe and I really kind of created this real bond going around the world doing that with the kids. So we take 18 family members around the world, and
Wow.
we do this big adventure that becomes a lot of fun. I mean, it just really was an amazing time of so my mom, my wife's mom, my brother-in-law, my sister, their families, and being able to bring them around the world. And every country we go to, we do one religion, right? We do one, whatever their religion is. If it's Krishna or Muslim or whatever their religion is, and we find out what they're, the Buddhists, we get to really dive into them. Now, we don't get to spend a lot of time, but in a few days that we spend there in the religion, get to see them. We met in India, we met these amazing Sikhs. You ever see the Sikhs, the guys, they're the Indians, the religion with the turbans, they wear the
Okay.
turbans, and very tall people, kind of beautiful people. And, we get to go spend time with them, and we spend time with the Krishnas and in a small little area, holy area in India called Vrindavan. We meet this guy named Rupa who's building this amazing school for 1,200 girls. And we get to spend time with them and we continue to work with them. They're doing amazing stuff. It's called Food for Life Vrindavan. They are doing amazing charity. If you want to invest in or see where the world's changed, this is a guy who is a dope smoking hippie from Italy, right? Starts his
Wow.
life kind of wayward, ends up in London, finds Krishna, becomes a devotee, and ends up creating this school for 1,200 girls. And the amount of impact he's making on girls' lives, this humble man who literally sleeps in his office behind his desk. He's this, he's given up all of his life to support these girls, and he puts together this amazing school. So, this adventure becomes part of an ongoing part of our life, right? So we start with that, and there becomes charities in Peru and South Africa and Greece and all kinds of other charity work we do, and it you start to open your eyes and see that there's amazing people on this planet that are really big givers. I mean, this planet has changed. I mean, no matter where you are in the world, there not everything's perfect, right? I was, I just came back from Croatia, and I think you'll appreciate this. I was there, and Croatia's beautiful. I mean, like, it's a beautiful country, gorgeous. But they were stuck in war for years, and they're coming out of war, and you get to spend time with the people who, I mean, for maybe 10 years ago, it was devastated, right? I mean, they went through ethnic cleansing, and today to see where they're at, and they're coming out of those days and getting to share the beauty of their country with tourists. I mean, just this amazing space to be in, right? You get to travel around the islands, and let's say there's 1,600. You go to Dubrovnik and Split, and these small little islands, and let's call that. Let's say that maybe they're 1,600 years old. I come back, and then we go to San Francisco for a couple weeks ago. We were in San Francisco, and you really see what our country has done in the last 250 years. It'll blow you away. I mean, I you look at that, and then we were in this last weekend we were in Philadelphia, and for where Betsy Ross was making her first flag, where they would have found out about, if the English would have found out about her making the flag, it would have been treason. She would have been arrested for treason. And the things that we've gone through in those 250 years, the country that we're building, the things that are happening around this world are amazing. I think a lot of times we argue with each other about red and blue and what's going on. But if we really look around this planet, there's some amazing people that have worked really hard to come up with some really bright ideas. Not always perfect. I mean, look, not always. We've messed some things up as humans. We've messed some things up. But overall, what we've done is pretty darn amazing.
Yeah.
Right. I mean,
Yeah.
there's been some amazing stuff happening, and
Yes,
especially here in
there
this
is.
country, the charity work that we do, and even in the roughest places, it's not perfect. For sure, we could do better,
Yep.
but it's not so bad.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. I mean, I see exactly what you're talking about. That I see so many entrepreneurs just doing such amazing things and making such an impact in this world. And I launching this podcast 3 years ago, my buddy Brad was like, we were having lunch one day at his place in San Diego, and he was like, Kev, he's like, you should seriously consider hosting a podcast. And I'm like, really? I'm like, why is that? And he's like, well, because he's like, you would love having the conversations with the entrepreneurs. And and he's like, and you wouldn't mess it all up trying to figure out how to monetize it. He's like, but yet you will. You totally will. It'll happen all organically. And he had been already hosting a podcast for 10 years. It's called Bacon Wrapped Business. And you can tell just from the name of it. Brad is a pretty laid back, easygoing guy. And so I was like, Brad, I was like, I hear you. I totally hear you. And I believe you're right. I probably would love it. And I was like, and of course, the last thing the business world needs is another Me Too podcast. What do I do to separate this thing apart? And he's like, Kev, he's like, you are going to talk with entrepreneurs about their most valuable relationships. Mm. And I was like, wow. I'm like, man, that sounds really good. And I came home. I started reaching out to a few of my entrepreneur friends, and I was like, hey, can you and I hop on Zoom? I want to have a conversation with you. I want to talk with you and have you share some of your most valuable relationships. And I'll tell you what, here we are now, almost 3 years into this. I think we've released 250 some episodes. And it has been such an amazing experience. And I get a front row seat to exactly what you were just talking about. All these entrepreneurs who place such a high value on relationships and are doing such big things in this world. And no, none of us are perfect, but we're all doing the best we can with what we got. We all have the right intention. We want to make an impact. And I'll tell you what, we figure it out, and we stumble as we go along, but we figure stuff out. And it's been pretty dang awesome to have a front row seat to all of that, So.
Yeah, you're doing some great stuff. I've watched a lot of your podcasts, and the work you're doing here, shining bright lights and great stories. I think that's one of the gifts of podcasting. It's been it's a fun journey. The stories and the ideas that come to the surface. First of all, this will be around for thousands of years. I mean, what's great about it is, now it's a digital format. These stories and ideas can continue to evolve and be out in the universe forever, which is kind of fun, right? You're bringing these bright ideas to the surface, and a lot of us. I don't know about you, but some days I feel like I'm a card short of a full deck. And I listen to one of your podcasts, and I hear one of your ideas and one of your entrepreneur ideas, and it brings me some hope. I get hope from your podcast. The work that you're doing brings us hope. Hey, look, if I worship and cherish those relationships that I have, right? Because a lot of the guests that you talk about that are on here talk about, that great relationship they had and how that changed their life and how they're grateful for it. If I show some gratitude for it,
Yep.
right? That's a good spot to be in. That's a good spot to start. On my worst days, if I can find a way to see someone or shine some light on them and have gratitude for the work they're doing, it doesn't make the day so bad.
That's right. Amen.
Yeah, yeah,
Anthony, I really appreciate you taking the time to have this conversation today. And for anybody that's listening to this going, man, Kev, I really like Anthony, man. Man, I love the way Anthony shows up. How can they find out more about you and the work you're doing? Any resources, any websites we can share
yeah.
with?
Let's here. Listen, come over to my podcast. I got Future Factory podcast. This week we just broke 26,000 subscribers on YouTube. It's been amazing. A
Awesome.
lot of fun over there. I'd listen. I'd love to have Future Factory podcast. It's on all the platforms that are out there. I'd love to have your guests come over and check that out. Or if anybody wants to email me, you can always email me at anthony@cdogroup.com. I'll make sure that Kev has all that contact down below. As always, it's fun to be on that podcast, and we always have some fun guests out there. So it'd be great to have some of your folks come over and visit us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That'd be awesome. Well, Anthony, once again, thank you so much for taking the time to have this conversation today. Really appreciate it. Man, I'm stoked to get this out there and share it with a lot of other entrepreneurs. So thanks again, man. Really appreciate you.
Same thing, Kev. Great show. Thanks for having me on. Really grateful.
Absolutely.